Hey everybody, how's it going? So today we're going to talk about another amplifier. This one. This is the Epiphone Slingshot 25R. Now, when I was a kid, like a lot of you, I had a small combo amp as my very first amp. It was a Fender Frontman 15G. It came with my red Affinity 2002 Squier Strat. And, you know, that amp, it is what it is. A decent clean channel, and the distortion channel sounded kind of like a wet fart. There's really not much you could do to make it sound much better. It didn't have reverb, it didn't have really anything. It had an aux in and it had a headphone jack, I believe, but I never used those things. So, you know, a year or two later, I was at Guitar Center and I saw this for 20 bucks. And to me, it was huge. Look at this gigantic speaker and how big it is. And it had something called reverb. Plugged a guitar into it in the used section of the store, turned the reverb up, blew me away. Reverb? I can make my guitar echo. I can get an audio adapter and I can plug my iPod into it and listen to all my songs on my iPod with reverb. You know, all the silly things that teenagers do with music equipment. So I bought it and I took it home and I was so excited, and you know, I had a little band with some guys from school, some friends, and you know, I was so proud of this amp, and it was such a big deal to me, and I thought it was such a big deal and such a huge amp. And sometime along the way, it ended up getting lost, and probably I sold it. I honestly don't remember what happened to it. But I kind of got a bug up my ear. And I posted on a Facebook group that I'm in. I said, hey guys, does anybody have a Slingshot 25R? I know it's a really weird amp. I can't find anything about it online. There's like one review for this amp on YouTube, and it's really old, and you can't really hear anything that the guy's saying, and you can't really hear the amp very well, how it sounds. The technical details leave a little bit to be desired, and somebody reached out to me, and they sent me one. So I'm very thankful to you. You know who you are, and here it is. So today, we're going to take a look at this time capsule of a practice amp and see, is it any good? Is it as good as I remember? Is the reverb any good? What's inside it? And what can we find? What can I summarize for you with the limited details that are available about this amp on the internet? So let's go ahead and take a closer look at it and talk about what we see. If we start with the front of the amp, there's really not much to see. It's a black Tolex box with your Epiphone logo there. You can kind of see the outline of the speaker, and we're going to measure it, but I think it might be a 12-inch speaker. And we'll check that in a second. One of the reasons I thought it was such a big amp and such a big deal was it's heavy. I mean, it's not heavy compared to that, you know, or a tube amp, but it was heavy to me. I thought it was, you know, pretty big. So that was one of the other things that I noticed about it. And even just now, it is heavy. It's heavier than it looks. Let's look at the top panel. If we look at the top panel here, left to right, we have our input. We have a drive channel with a button to toggle it on and off. The drive channel has a volume and a gain. And then you have the clean channel, which just has a volume. The EQ is shared between both channels, so whatever you set it to is going to be the EQ for the drive and the clean channel. And there's the reverb knob. It does have a headphone output, and there you can see Slingshot 25R. If we take a look at the back, what do we see on the very bottom right away? That, my friends, is a reverb tank. So this is not digital reverb. This is real spring reverb. And when it is on, if you bang on it or tap on it, you actually hear the springs bouncing around in there. More often than not, that's going to give you a pretty good reverb sound. So when we do our sound test, we'll definitely check that out. Really, there's nothing on the back besides some scratches, some screws, and here's a little label. Let's see. It's 28 watt power consumption. That is not the wattage of the amp, though. Common mistake. People will list amps at wattages for the power consumption, but that is not the wattage of the amp. Because this is called a Slingshot 25R, I'm going to venture to guess that it is a 25 watt amp. So that's 25 watts of output consuming 28 watts of power. You can see a serial number here, the fuse, the AC voltage, and you can see it was made in the People's Republic of China. Now you see PR China, that sometimes is an indicator, can help you see when something was made. Nowadays things just say made in China, but there was a time back in the 80s and 90s, sometimes even before that, where it would say PR China on things. I've not been able to date this, so I'm not sure how old it is. The next thing we need to do is take the back panel off and see what that speaker is. I can't wait to see what it is. Well, it's all nasty back here. I unscrewed everything, but the power cable is screwed into the back panel, so I'm not going to bother taking that off. We can see what we need to see. If you can see here, there's the speaker. There's not really any markings on it telling me the wattage or the impedance of the speaker. And then there's the amp itself, just laying in the top. Pretty basic stuff going on there. Don't touch stuff when you're in an amp like this. Even this small amp could carry lethal amounts of voltage even after it's unplugged, so be careful. You also get to see the 30-ish years of gross cobwebs and stuff in this amp. But yeah, there's the speaker. So let's see what the size is. It looks like a 12, but I'm going to measure it. Not sure how well this is going to show up on video, but it does appear to be a 10-inch speaker, not a 12-inch speaker. I'm measuring it here, and it's looking just about 10. Okay, so now that we've looked at the specs on it, a 10-inch speaker, 25 watts, spring reverb, blah, 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 let's plug it in and turn it on and see how it sounds. Okay, here we go. I've got the EQ set at a decent place for this amp, and I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. Right now, we've got it on the clean channel, and we're going to start with the neck. Okay, so there you go. Now let me show you what I mean. We'll go to the bridge and then I'll show you this, and then I'll explain what I was talking about with the EQ. So here's the bridge. Okay, so if you take the amp EQ here, and like, for example, the highs are on 10. Normally you would never do that. But look what happens if you put it down to like a reasonable level. Like, let's put it at 6. Listen to this. Hear how muffled that sounds? You've got to have the highs up almost pretty much all the way to get any kind of, I mean, now if you like fuzz or whatever, I guess you could say that it has built-in fuzz, but we're going to turn that back up. Okay, so now the reverb, we talked about it. Here it is. Let's start it just a little smidge. Let's put it like right there. Check it out. Very, very good reverb. Now, on some amps, where it's at right here is the most you're going to get out of a cheap solid state amp. But this thing, it goes way overboard. So like, even if you put it at half, it's a bit overboard. And it rings forever, and that's at half. Now if you turn it up all the way, overkill. So it works for something like that, but if you've got it on like the bridge pickup, in this case, this is my white Strat, so this is the guitar I would have had back when I got this amp. It's too much for high output. Single coils, pretty good. Humbuckers, let's put it back down to a reasonable level. Now, one thing I want to mention about this clean channel is that it's a very good clean channel if you can get the EQ set like this, to where it's usable. Because there's a lot of dynamic range here. A lot of times with these solid state amps, you can't really get much. I mean, you get like one volume, like, you know, picking lightly and attacking doesn't really give you any variance in your volume. But with this clean channel, you get that. And here's an example. So there's a little example of just the dynamics that this amp can give you. Not bad. So let's go to the drive channel. Let's put the gain down to about 5, let's say, and let's see how this sounds. Okay, let's go ahead and put it on, let's put the gain up all the way. Pretty damn good right there, if you ask me. So now that we've gone through the sound samples, let's talk about what we just heard. Okay, so the Epiphone Slingshot 25R, what do I think? Well, for starters, that was just using this microphone here. I don't have a mic stand short enough. It didn't move or vibrate or cause any problems to the sound quality of our recording. But what did I think? Well, I don't normally like when people label things as practice, like, that guitar is great for practice, or that amp is great for practice, because usually that's just some shitty thing that a gear snob would say, like, oh, that Squire is good for practice. I'm gonna sit over here with my American Ultra in a corner and laugh at you in my bedroom. That's the kind of thing that someone like that would say, and it irritates me when people say that. They'll say that about a lot of amps, like PV Bandit, there's one behind me, or Frontman, there's a Frontman 212R behind me. The Raven, which we did a video on. Maybe I just like to collect crappy amps, I don't know. But they'll say that about those kind of amps and say, oh, they're great for practice, because they spent $5,000 on their dual rectifier and they gotta feel good about themselves. So I don't like it when people label things as they're good for practice, because that's usually just an insult, you know, a thinly veiled insult, and I don't like it. If the term were used correctly, however, I would say this Epiphone Slingshot 25R is good for practice. Now I'm going to qualify that and explain why. It's good for practice because it sounds pretty good at low volumes. The problem is when you turn it up, it starts to kind of fart a little bit. It's only 25 watts, and 25 watt solid state is very different from 25 watt valve. 25 watt valve, you know, you could blow your head off with that. You might be able to blow your head off with 25 watt solid state depending on how it's wired. I wouldn't gig it. Maybe the limitation here is the 10-inch speaker. Maybe if we put this with my 2x12 or something, or through the speaker that's in the Marshall behind me, maybe it would be really loud and sound amazing. And you know, that's something that we like to do on this channel. We like to do stuff like that. But this is not a review or a mod project this time. Or a review of a mod project. This is a review of the amp as it comes. How is it? What do I recommend? Well, if you can find one cheap, it's cool to have in your bedroom, cool to have down in your basement, it's cool to have on your desk, if you got room for it. It's cool to haul up to your friend's house. Could it play over a drummer? Yes, I know this because of when I was younger, I did that. I wouldn't perform with it though. I don't think that it's got the chops to perform. It doesn't have an effects loop, and the sound is okay, but I don't think it would sound very good in a mix for an entire set of songs. Could you make it work in a recording setting? I believe you could, but again, fringe case. You could say the same about almost any amp. You could probably take a battery-powered Marshall for $49.99 and headphone out it or mic it, and you amp it enough in your DAW to record with it, sure. But yeah, how is it? I think it's okay for practice. If you have one and it was like a childhood one or something, or you had one when you were a child and you want to get one now, go ahead and do it. They're cheap enough, if you can find them, that they're probably worth having for those reasons. I would not go out and just get one if you don't have a reason to get it. If you see it, happenstance, and you understand the use case, it could be good. But in this price range, I'd say these things are going for around $50 to $75 online, give or take. For $50 to $75, you could get something like a Blazer 158 or a Rage 158. I think those are really good amps. We did review one of those on the channel here recently around Christmas time, and I think those are probably going to be better for you. I think they sound better, and you know, they're made in America, and I like PV, if you can't tell. I would recommend that instead of this. So there you go. I don't like giving bad reviews of stuff, man, but it's not bad, it's just not great either. I'm glad I have one because of my past with it, and I'm happy to have it around. Maybe one day I'll use it for recording something for the clean channel. And one side note, if you only play clean and you never use anything else, no distortion, no pedals, nothing, you could probably get away with miking this up somewhere if you only played clean. But I would only do that if you really had to. Thanks for watching, I appreciate it. If you'd like to buy any Fender products, you can use the link in my description, it'll help the channel. And if you want to sign up for guitar lessons, you can get Fender Play free for 14 days using my link. Please make sure to follow us on social media. Thanks again, I appreciate you. Please subscribe. See you next time. Keep on rocking.